We're Kyler and Cody McCormick, two brothers on a journey to pave our own path while chasing our passion.
While building our adventure filmmaking brand, The Outbound Life, we become sponsored by some of the top brands in the film and travel industries, acquired Fortune 500 clients, and have spoken on stages all across the country sharing our story.
We now invite you along on our journey as we sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creators, and diverse thought leaders to discuss how to live a life we consider outbound, a life where you believe your story matters and live beyond your limits.
Come along and live the outbound life.
Today's guest is none other than the one and only Van Neistat. Now, Van's channel has been my favorite thing on YouTube ever since its launch, which my friends can definitely attest to as I've forced all of them to watch his content. Bert Kreisher, when describing Van Neistat, is quoted as saying, "There's no one like Van in the world," and compared his level of genius to the likes of Dave Chapelle.
Did he really? Was I there when he said that?
He got the quote's out there.
That's
Jesus,
accurate.
Thanks, Bert.
Now, it's really hard to put Van Neistat in a box. He's what happens when poetry, philosophy, filmmaking, and craftsmanship intersect. Given the choice between a fully pimped out MacBook Pro and a typewriter, he chooses the typewriter every time. He's a repair it instead of replace it sort of guy, and his handmade approach to life leaks into everything he does. He and his brother Casey wrote, directed, and starred in the HBO show The Neistat Brothers. They started vlogging before vlogging was a thing. After their TV show, Casey and Van took separate paths. Casey went on to pioneer vlogging as we know it today on YouTube, and Van continued to build his filmmaking career working on projects with the illustrious contemporary artist Tom Sachs. He also directed a feature film and has worked on many other notable projects. Where things really start to get exciting is about 1 year ago, Van pulled back the curtain on his otherwise mostly private life and launched his very own YouTube channel, which goes by The Spirited Man. Casey introduced Van as his favorite YouTuber, as Van mostly doesn't watch YouTube. And this really makes his work one of a kind and original. Van has since gained millions of views and coined a filmmaking style he calls the industrial essay film. His videos feel custom, explore a wide variety of profound life lessons, and have a way of unlocking the spiritedness most of us lose when we grow up. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one and only spirited man, Van Neistat.
Thank you for having me, guys. I'm sorry to interrupt your very well written and eloquent intro.
Does it entertain you to hear how people attempt to describe you?
Well, no, because in my mind, I'm kind of like, yeah, but like,
sure.
really, but yeah, but there's this also stuff, and at the same time, I am trying to understand from a kind of branding point of view.
Yeah.
What is my simple, like, what is this guy? Like, what is the simple, what is this guy explanation in like 5 words?
I like that.
Right. Elevator pitch. Like, what's my sentence?
Well, I don't think we gave 5 words. We gave a few more than that, but I think we're probably always going through that refining process.
But it is helpful. It is helpful to hear other people say, oh, he's the, you want some genius to be like, oh, he's the blah, blah, blah of blah, blah, blah. And then and then you just steal that and go with it.
Well, what we'll do is we'll send this bio over to you, and if anything sticks with you, feel free to pull it, and maybe that'll be some new branding you go with.
Well,
you never know.
It's funny how oftentimes, it's often like other people from an outside perspective who are kind of telling us who we are, and sometimes something sticks. I think even with Cody and I, when we first got started, we're like, let's be filmmakers, right? And then we worked on this kind of like outdoorsy, adventurous project. And then somebody was like, oh, you guys are the adventure filmmakers, right? And we're like, ooh, seeing dollar signs, right? Yeah, we're adventure filmmakers. I'm going to introduce myself as an adventure filmmaker. And those are 2 words that are like, kind of simple. And it also brings a certain connotation as opposed to like, oh, you're a videographer, right?
Is that what you roll with now? That's kind of your branding, right? Adventure. Just stick with that. Just stick with that until one of you guys, God forbid, gets hurt.
Yeah, exactly. No, but we're passionate kind of about that those industries. of things that include adventure, travel, and kind of the outdoor space. So we're involved in a lot of those communities. And I think that just kind of came from growing up. Those were things we were interested in. And then through our work, we've gained a lot more access to doing those types of trips and projects.
Yeah, but enough about us. I think, Van, to your point of, you live this very one-of-a-kind lifestyle, or so it seems, and your work, it's original. And I think for us, even kind of the progress of this conversation, maybe what we can do is start broad on a high level and kind of understand what you're about. And then we can get into some of the specifics and talk about different projects you've done and are working on. So just for starters, for the people who maybe aren't familiar, the spirited man or the spirited woman, how would you define that?
Well, I would just steal from Matthew B. Crawford's book, Shop Class as Soulcraft, and that's where the phrase comes from.
Yeah. And
the spirited man is a person who takes care of his own business, really. So, he talks about the example he gives is that these new cars probably manufactured, I would say after maybe 2005, 2006, around there. They're so sophisticated and so computerized that a non-expert without the specific, factory equipment can't really get into these machines and understand what's going on. They're dependent on computer diagnostics. And he says something like, the spirited man wants to know what's wrong with his car and understand the problem. And I read that and I was just like, that is me. That's what I am like. And then there's another quote from John Lennon, and it's like later in his life, post the Beatles. And I don't remember what the interviewer asked him, but he said something to the effect of, I could write a song. Someone could hire me to write a song and I could do it. I have all of the skills that enable one to write a song. And he said, but I don't want to work that way. I always want to work inspired or from the spirit. And that's another one that really resonated with me. And, I'm from a different generation than you guys. We're Gen X. We're different. We are different. Yeah. It's a different people. It's a different point of view. And it's my generation, according to the historians who I read about, there's this guy named Neil Howe who actually coined the term millennial. And he writes about generational differences. And one of the things about Gen Xers is that they're self-sufficient. They're the latchkey kids. That's what we were called, because we would come home from school. My entire generation would come home from school and no one was home. You just had a key to your house because both of your parents were working. And so, that's all of my friends, growing up. And so we have this kind of self-sufficiency. My brothers are the same because I was the eldest of the household. So they're more Gen X than they are millennials. They're both sort of born on the cusp, and, my sister as well. And, I think that's part of it. I think, and so is this man, Matthew Crawford, who wrote the book. And all of a sudden you couldn't crack open, you couldn't crack open the machines you depended on and fix them. It was, software or whatever. And then also all of a sudden it was, oh, it's broken, throw it away.
Yeah. I've heard that before from mechanics talking about the inability to work on the vehicles in the way that you just stated, but even in the consumer industry of literally phones and, iPods but just all these categories, do you think they shifted kind of at that same time period of 2005, 2006?
Well, I think what happened was the computer just became everything. The iPhone became everything. The iPhone is your taxi cab. The iPhone is your calculator. The iPhone is your camera. Yeah. The iPhone is your phone. The iPhone is the US Post Office. And one of the big reasons why I do like I work with my hands so often. A lot of the, a lot of the subject matter of The Spirited Man is me fixing things or making things.
Right.
And I'm like, it's a very strange compulsion. And, I wonder why is this? Why am I compelled to do this? It's very natural for me.
Yeah.
It's something I've always done. And a big part of it lately, I think, is me taking a break from the computer. Like I have we have two non-computerized cars. They're just like, turn the heat on, you slide a thing and turn a knob.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think that the shift, it started with computers, and then it's just migrated, and everything has become a computer. The cars are computers now. The cameras are computers now. And a lot of things became much, much better. Like video cameras and cameras are way superior in just about every way to film cameras and like a Nagra, analog recording deck. It's just way better. You can categorize it, everything. The image is, the image is sharper and higher resolution than 35 millimeter, Academy film.
Yeah.
But I, as a person who is the last of the analog native generation in human history, my life developed during analog times. They were very straight. They were analog. They weren't computers.
I think it's something interesting too. And from my perspective, I think a reason your content and your storytelling style really stands out is because it seems like behind everything you do and the choices you make, there is a reason, as in it's thought out. And I think as you were describing, this very autopilot kind of generation where, we're essentially all cyborgs, right? Like my iPhone, this is my brain, this is Google, and this is Siri, and it's also my GPS, and it's where this has my answers. And I think because we're all plugged into that, whenever somebody really steps back and almost imposes restrictions on themselves, right? Because you could use more technology, but you choose not to. That really stands out. And I think as you're continuously putting these videos out, people are almost stepping back in their own lives. People are starting to ask questions in their own lives about, okay, I see how I'm doing this thing over here in an autopilot sort of way, but is there a more deliberate approach to going about that?
Well, yeah. And again, it's a generational thing. I think from your point of view, you look back on the typewriter and you say, oh, this is a restriction from his computer.
Sure.
But it's the other way around for me. I learned how to type on a typewriter. There were no computers. There was one room in school that had 11 computers in it. And that's what computers were when I was growing up. And it took me, I went from typewriters to word processors because they're superior. And when you're learning to type and you're learning all of the technical realities of typing in the English language, usage and grammar and so forth, you're going to want a word processor to do drafts and to move, oh, this sentence doesn't belong there, it belongs here. But as you become a professional writer and you become a master of the language, I found going back to what, I went into the word processor thing reluctantly. I've always hated them. And I went into them reluctantly because they were a sort of learning tool that would help me become a better technician vis-a-vis writing. And then once it was strange. I mean, it was me. I think I bought this manual typewriter in maybe 2014 or something like this. It hasn't been a long time. And I brought it back to my apartment. I started writing on it and I was like, oh my God, I know how to write now. I can use one of these things now. So one of the things that's a little bit difficult to express to people of, say, your generation is that the paradigms of computing and computer devices changed very often. And by paradigm, I mean what the thing is. So a computer, when I first started out, was an Apple IIc, and you had to enter in all of these commands, and then it would do like a limited number of things. And then in 1984, the Macintosh computer came out, and it was a mouse that you slid around and clicked on things, and things opened. And so all of that computer knowledge that you spent hard, and I find it tremendously difficult to learn. I have a severe time learning things. All of that energy you put into learning all those commands and being patient and learning the little keys on the keyboard and so forth to use your Apple II, all wasted. And now you have this new thing, and it's this mouse. Now you guys have had the mouse the whole time. Right. And it hasn't just been that. You guys have had basically so 07 is when the iPhone came out. You guys are 26. 07's 15 years ago. It came out when you were like 11.
Yeah.
It came
before
out.
we were using phones, right.
I was 32 years old when the iPhone came out. So I had learned all of these other paradigms with phones, the flip phones. And then there was this texting thing where you had to like hit the numbers. You'd hit a number 6, like 1, 2, 3 times, and then you'd get a T. And out of the gates, like I think starting with your generation or maybe the millennials, all of the paradigms had been locked in. It was like, it's iPhone, it's YouTube, it's graphic user interfaces, it's Macintosh. Macintosh OS 10 came out. I was like 27 years old. There were 9 other operating systems before that. Yeah. And so a lot of my like kind of anachronistic tendencies is me being stubborn about learning yet another platform.
Yeah. Even if you creating videos and your style happens to be your disposition, how you grew up in your very analog hands-on wiring, as a byproduct, people from my generation are seeing like, wait, there's totally different ways of thinking about things. I think it's cool that you're having that effect. And I think another reason that, in my opinion, your videos are really catching on is because they feel brutally honest. One of the videos that comes to mind, this is one of my favorites, is your video about running. And for the people listening, this one, I think it's called Running Sucks. Yeah. And what I think makes it awesome, though, is that you're really not promising some sort of magic pill, right? You're not saying, hey, run, and you're going to live this Tony Robbins life, and you're going to like go crush the job interview. You end it by saying, one, you say you haven't actually ever experienced a runner's high. You don't know if you believe in it. It's just not your experience. You don't have those. But in addition, you finish the video by saying running is something that simply makes you a little less crazy. And that's profound to me, because I think a lot of people are looking for something more than just, hey, do this and you might be a little less crazy. So it makes me curious to ask, out of these 3 words, which do you resonate with most and why? Pessimist, realist, optimist.
They're all so good. They're all so good. The one most, I mean, I guess just for rational reasons, I guess optimist, because we don't have any idea how things will turn out. We have no idea. So you might as well just say they're going to turn out okay, because you have no idea. Just pick the good one.
It's like, what's your strategy, right?
Yeah, that's mine. Just pick the good one. A thing about the technology, again, one of the great technological residuals of World War II was chemistry and the amazing things that corporations and people could do with chemicals. And so what ended up happening was they used chemistry to master food production and mass produce food production. But what ended up happening, and this is just a theory of mine, is I think that the baby boomers are maybe the worst fed humans in human history, because their foods were so processed with all of these new space age food processes and chemicals. And one of the things that you see happening now, and this is relatively new in my lifetime, is people going back to the old food technologies and saying, okay, well, they brought us to to this point of, being sanitary, and we don't want E. coli, but these practices produce healthier foods with higher nutrients and so forth. And I just think that all technology, there should be some kind of vanguard, or there is a vanguard for all technologies when things go too far. For instance, there was the destroyers in the U.S. Navy. They had spent, I don't know how many billions of dollars converting the destroyers from sticks for piloting the destroyers in harbors to like a touch screen thing. Okay. And there were way more accidents. So they went back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, it goes back even to Apple when the iPod came out, and then Microsoft sees that and they come out with the Zune, and they're like, hey, we're going to take everything you guys are doing and we're going to make everything better, more features. I think they had these features where you could like scan somebody else who had a Zune, which I don't know who else had a Zune or who had a Zune to begin with, but they stacked all these features. Okay, so it was technically a better product. And I remember hearing the story of, gosh, maybe this was some Apple executive who got in a cab with a Microsoft guy. And basically the Microsoft guy was talking about how his product was better. And the Apple guy was just like, yeah, I think you're probably right. And that was kind of the end of the story. But the Apple guy knew that, listen, people want to listen to music and they want to do it in a way that works and is simple. And that's it. That's why I buy an iPod. Van, actually, I would love to kind of go back to even when we were talking about running and we were talking about optimism, pessimism, realism, how at the end of the day, optimism, at least in our opinion, it is a strategy, right? It's kind of a choice. Yeah. Maybe you could say it's a self-fulfilling prophecy as far as if I'm going to believe in myself, I might as well, right? It's kind of like the salesman who goes door to door and he knocks on the door and he says, hey, you wouldn't want to buy this, would you? Right? Like that's not going to work. That is not optimism. And you might be able to call that realism. You might be able to say it's a dog eat dog world and people don't care about this window cleaner. Optimism, in our opinion too, really, it's the best option you have. And I'll pull from a quote from somebody we really look up to who actually came on our podcast last year, Bert Jacobs. And Bert started Life is Good, the clothing company, with his brother. And this is the way he describes optimism. He says, pessimism is corrosive. It keeps your head down. Okay. Realism is a step in the right direction, but lacks imagination. Optimism opens doors. It enables imagination. So at least the way I look at it, it's like, yeah, I do think it, to a large degree, your life and your beliefs do kind of become this self-fulfilling prophecy. You might as well believe that you have a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of the most powerful fuels that we have. I mean, like our minds are very capable of, making our day bad if we're down about what's going to happen and whatnot. So I think even kind of training yourself to always look on the bright side or have the propensity to see doors open and whatnot is helpful. And I've seen that in our own lives. And as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about, so obviously running to you is a discipline that is regular for you. And you do it probably for a bunch of different reasons, but it helps you start your day right. I'm curious, are there any other disciplines that you implement or habits that you swear by that you're like, I need to do this daily or weekly?
Yes, that I also hate. I wake up at 4 a.m. 5 days a week. And so when I sleep in, it's till 6 a.m. That's the latest my body will allow me to sleep. So 4 days a week, I wake up at 4 a.m. and I intermittent fast. So I eat in an 8-hour window every day. So, for 16 hours a day, I don't eat. Those are the major ones.
What effect have you found from intermittent fasting? I know a lot of people do them for different reasons. I've dabbled in it a little bit myself, and I will say,
Same.
when I'm doing that, I do feel a bit more clarity. I feel like mentally, I'm just a little bit more alert with my body not needing to digest. Like, what have you gotten out of it?
Okay, well, I would say that it makes you much, much more regular as far as like taking a shit is concerned. I did it because I'd never had, this is right after my son was born. I'd never had a doctor tell me to lose weight. And my doctor said, I was at 183 and he said, okay, just lose weight. He said, bring the weight down. So the only diet I could remember would be intermittent fasting because it's so simple.
Yeah.
And then I started running I picked up running again at the same time. So I ended up losing 18 pounds and I think I've kind of maintained that weight. Now I just leverage it and eat like an animal. Like I'm terrible. Like yesterday when I had my first meal, I went to Burger King. I got a Whopper, a chicken sandwich, 6 nuggets and onion rings and a large Diet Coke. That was my breakfast.
Oh man, that's a meal for you.
But I'm still in good, I'm still at my right weight and I can, and I run and everything. I haven't found any I'm like super duper tired all the time. Like almost all of my weight. Like I want to go to sleep as soon as I get home from my run.
Do you nap?
Do
you ever nap throughout the day?
I do nap. Yeah. I do. I read a book called Rest. I actually made a film about it with Sachs that we haven't released yet. With Tom Sachs. And it's all about all of the benefits of rest. It's like, it has to be sort of part of your discipline is rest. You have to make yourself rest. And I do nap when I feel like I've earned it, which is stupid. But, this stuff takes a lot of time to do. So,
well, and I think there's people, personally, I can get away with a nap and I think it helps so much. It's like a reset halfway through the day and it works. But I definitely have friends who say they can't nap. Doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes, for 45 minutes, they're going to wake up groggy and it's just not something they can play with. But I'm a big fan of the nap.
So what is your sleep schedule then if you're waking up at 4?
So I'm usually in bed by 8.
Okay. That's hard.
Because that's when my son goes to bed. So I just go to bed at the same time.
So you mentioned Tom Sachs, a new project you're doing with him.
No, I think old project. Old project that we didn't release. It was for the Japan Olympics that didn't happen because of COVID.
Gotcha.
So we have these I think it's 6 videos it's called Ritual. And it was 6 different rituals. And one of them was rest. Yeah.
I've really enjoyed learning more about Tom Sachs through your story and even kind of prepping for this conversation. Because I was not aware of how Tom Sachs worked. A lot of the works that he had done, I had certainly heard his name in the past, but it just wasn't something that I had pushed into. But even learning how he's been a big part, a very influential individual for your life. And I'm curious, kind of if you could contrast your working style before working with Tom Sachs and then after. What does that look like?
Well, Tom he has this incredible balance of paradoxes and he's at once super, super disciplined and the most scattered crazy man, just simultaneously. And it's astonishing. And, but he taught me to work hard and be brave. I think of all the micro shit that I learned from him, all of the ideas in 10 bullets, which 10 bullets is work to code, sacred space, be on time, be thorough, I understand, get confirmation, keep a list, always be knolling, sacrifice to Leatherface, and persistence.
All right. You get an A+ on the quiz. Look at that.
And so those are the 10 bullets. Basically, those are the things you must do to be successful in your work. Those are just the 10 commandments of working. And he's never on time. I've worked with him for 22 or 21 years, maybe 3 or 4 times he's been on time.
Really?
He is never on time with anyone, but
Really?
that doesn't matter because he makes up for it with, in other ways. But
Yeah.
he's an incredibly skilled master and he's incredibly intelligent. He's a very natural teacher, but he doesn't put up with any kind of bullshit. I think one of the great things he taught me is this expression. It's almost the motto of his studio. And it's this idea that creativity is the enemy. Like if he were to call something you did creative, that probably meant you were going to be fired very soon. You are not supposed to be creative beyond his boundaries because he has spent a lifetime kind of understanding the code to which his work is built,
Gotcha.
and it goes very deep, it's, and so creativity is you bringing your outside pretensions to that work. And one of the reasons we were able to work so well together is because I had a knack to channel his code.
Gotcha.
I could build things the way that, not so much build things, but I just sort of had the voice, a very similar voice to his voice. His work is sort of the embodiment, like the physical embodiment of all this stuff we're talking about, of all this planned obsolescence and technological wonder versus technological malaise. And like he built a toilet from scratch that was, it was a model of it was called Lav 2, and it was it was a specific airplane bathroom that it's like the Boeing 81675 bathroom. And he built the entire thing out of foam core and fiberglass. Wow. And he used a wet dry shop vac and like pumps and stuff that he bought so that it was a fully functioning bathroom, and the sink worked and the hot water worked and the cold water worked. And the sort of the creativity is the enemy embodiment is that nothing was for decoration. Like the entire piece looked like a beautiful piece of art because it was all hand built and improvised in service to the function that it must perform. Right?
Gotcha.
It didn't have to be reliable though, because it's a piece of art. So it just had to work a few times.
Yeah.
And, him refining his code is essentially refining it to be beautiful and to be fast to build.
Yeah.
And then the real artistic oomph that art students and intellectuals and critics would talk about would be just the overall idea of what the thing is. This is a handmade, homemade airplane bathroom. And then the critics can tell you what the significance of all that is.
Yeah, it's like in wrapping my head around it, I think art, I would say years ago, I had a low appreciation for art. And given I work in an industry that I'm considered an artist and I'm considered creative, and that's the realm we play in. I think in Kyler and my work, I take on a lot more of the business, figuring things out, and Kyler's a lot more of the creative lead, even though we both like bits and pieces. But I've developed an appreciation for art. I think 10 years ago, I'd probably look at that piece and be like, okay, where's the use in it? Or why are we even talking about this or something? I just didn't have the appreciation for it. And that's something that I've had to acquire and work on. And now it's fascinating to hear about these things. And even just the fact it can be done, that in itself is stuff people take away and they get inspired, and it unlocks things in their own lives. And that's why I think a lot of people appreciate art, is because of that, or to appreciate the intentionality that the specific artist had on that piece. How does a person get that much fuel and motivation to spend that much time and money on a piece like that? That in itself is something that is mind-blowing to me. And you've probably witnessed over and over and over and over being up close to that. as I think about Tom Sachs, like one thing I want to make sure we try and look at maybe ways that we can apply some of the lessons learned here for other people, right? Listening in. I know 10 bullets is a profound thing that people can take away and look at and learn a bit of his process of his studio. If you were to pick one of his bullets that you think is like top of your list, key takeaway that improved your working process, what would that be? Like, how could other people get inspired to maybe try one bullet and apply it to their work?
I'm looking at them all right now. Well, I think the most obvious one, but it's not very exciting, is just bullet number 10, just persistence. But, there's this myth, talking about optimism, there's also this, I call it like American oppressive positivity. There's this lie, this mythology. I have all these quotations that I think up, and then I just write them down on a Post-it note, and I put them on my window here. And then sometimes I type them out and post them on Instagram.
Cool.
And I have one right here. Let me just grab it.
Yeah.
And it says, when successful, denying your natural gifts is a form of arrogance. No, not anyone can do it. And I think that there is this real, I heard Mr. Beast say, like, literally anyone can have a multi-million hit, video, YouTube channel. No, that's not true. You just are not acknowledging your natural gifts. And like, you asked sort of hypothetically, like, where does he get the energy to do it? And it's like, well, that's one of his gifts. He's born.
There's something innate. Yeah.
Cool. And my brother Casey is the same way. He's like born with that energy. He works harder than everyone, Casey does, and he's smarter than everyone. And those two things, I see your Jordan Peterson poster in the background there. Those two things are what put the top people at the top. The smartest, hardest working people are at the top. Elon Musk is smarter than everyone and works harder than everyone. He doesn't just work harder than everyone. He's also smarter than everyone. And the wonderful thing about America is that it's this sophisticated filtration system that allows people who are willing to work super, super, super hard, who aren't that smart, to probably go further than they would in any other, civilization.
Sure.
But no, not anyone can do it. No, not everyone can do it. You have to acknowledge that there are natural gifts that people have. Having said that, it's not entirely natural gifts. There's a fantastic documentary that my friends Josh and Ben Safdie, also brothers, that they produced, and I think they directed, about this basketball player, Lenny Cook. Okay. And he was a McDonald's All-American. I think he was in the same class as like LeBron James, or he might've been a little bit older than that. Okay. It might've been like Kobe Bryant. Like they were all in that same arena. I think it's in Chicago. I don't know where it is actually, but the best basketball players in the world. And he didn't work hard. This guy, Lenny Cook, he was better than naturally, when you're naturally gifted and you're in elementary school, high school, blah, blah, that's all that matters is natural gifts. Cause you all have the same amount of time playing the dumb game. Yeah. And then, he was lazy. He was lazy. He didn't have the gift of drive. He didn't have the gift of like ambition. Yeah. And all these kids he could dunk on, 10 years later, he's 100 pounds overweight, and he goes and visits them, and they're like leaving practice at Madison Square Garden because like they're on the Knicks and stuff. Yeah. And I love that those guys made that movie, because it's like I think there needs an ancillary to that movie, is like, okay, you can have all the talent in the world and not put in the work, and you don't get anywhere. But the opposite is also true. You can do all the work in the world. If you don't have the talent, you're screwed.
Right. So self-awareness, right. It's like you figure out what is innate, and then you double and triple down on that. That's where the persistence comes into the equation. And it's kind of interesting. And that's even the lifelong journey of trying to figure out what is that innate thing versus what is just a choice, right? Because anybody can go from zero to like, gosh, competent at something. I think about your surfing video. That was awesome. Your instructional, it wasn't how to surf, it was how to learn how to surf. And you basically, you don't even walk away being the expert surfer, but you kind of conjure up the formula to learn how to get an appetite to get on the dance floor. Here's how to enjoy the process of learning how to surf. But yes, that self-awareness part is huge, and we can't overlook that. Not anybody can become LeBron James. And this makes me interested to rewind to the early days of you and Casey when you're making videos together, even before you had your HBO show. I'd be curious to hear what were kind of the separate roles that you and Casey would take. You know, what was your wiring and how did that differ when you were creating videos together?
Casey, because he, not because of anything, just from day one, he's always been very good at acquiring resources. Like he's always had money. When he was a child, he had money.
Interesting.
He was thrown out of the house when he was 15 years old. He had $10,000 in cash under his bed. So, $10,000, you could buy a BMW with $10,000 back then. Not a brand new one, but a nice one. He's highly intelligent. One of his tricks is he doesn't let on. As smart as you think he is way smarter than what you see before you. So the roles was he was very, very good at, just to say the business side is very generalized, but like raising money, getting people to give us money.
Just like hustling and making those things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. He was very good at that. And then the day-to-day, I can't figure out how he was able to do the day-to-day operations and be able to make everything. All the stuff that he was able to make. Like it was crazy. And he was like, he had a kid and he was going back and forth to Connecticut, to be with the kid. And, but he was very good at strategizing and just driven and focused. And me, I was just I had this very ridiculous and foolish notion that if your work is good enough, then the business will take care of itself, when that's exactly opposite. That is exactly opposite. And if your work is good enough and you don't take care of the business, you're just going to get robbed. That's what happens. Whether you're the Rolling Stones or Bob Dylan or one of those geniuses, you're going to get robbed. If your work's good enough and you don't pay attention to the business, that's what's going to happen to you. It's inevitable.
Yeah. They call it best-selling author, not best writing author.
Yeah, right.
You need to sell the books. You need to get out and sell them.
It's not just to like make crap and get, smart about marketing, although you could make an argument for that. But it's not an isolated process of let me just keep refining my craft until I'm a multimillionaire.
I thought that's what it was, but it's not.
So were you guys like when you were even younger, before, I guess, working on this as a career path, were you out of your siblings collaborating together? Like, was it you two that were naturally putting things together, and then that just kind of grew into like a business?
Well, we're 6 years apart, so no, because when I was in college, he was in junior high. So,
gotcha.
So no, it wasn't until he was, he grew up and moved out of the house and so forth. I became his legal guardian in Virginia. We didn't start like collaborating formally until he moved to New York in like 2002, maybe. 2001,
Is that
2002.
around the time you met Tom Sachs? Because if I remember correctly, you were working at Scholastic.
Yeah.
Before then, you get introduced to Tom. And then is that when the two of you were both working for Tom Sachs and started working together on things?
Yes. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. I got him his job at Tom Sachs. And then we were both making videos for Tom Sachs, and then Tom Sachs introduced us to a few of his collectors, and Tom Sachs vouched for us. And then the collectors started to patronize our work and, give us money to make things. And then that's how we sort of built our little business together. Well, for me, it was to make feature films, but I think that was misguided. I don't think that was really, to me, that was the ultimate artistic dream.
Yeah.
Was to make feature films that were great. And but I think the practical dream was to be able to live like a successful dentist with the work that I did.
And that's kind of like what you've seen as like the benchmark of success then.
Yes.
Like as you describe it, a successful dentist that comes with all the things you kind of picture up in your mind of not having to worry about money.
It's the upper middle class. Upper middle class is a little vague. Sure. But it's like, I don't know. I think the dollar figure of it, and, you know, given it's 20%, you know, the real inflation rate is 20% when you factor in healthcare and heusing. You know, it's probably something like $500,000 a year or something or more to live in an upper middle class lifestyle, you know, flying first class and then going to be able to ski a couple times a year in a great place where you rent a house for a month, or not for a month, for, you know, 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's always, money has always been part of my ambition.
Yeah. And I can relate on that of even like business goals. Like I want to hit certain numbers and that really fulfills me. Even take out the utility of the money on the backside of it, but more so just like the actual achieving and, you know, whether that's feeling that I'm competent then, like that I can actually do these sorts of things. How does the monetary drive stack up to the pure, I guess, artistic drive of like wanting to create
the authenticity of your work, maybe?
Well, in this phase of my like artistic development, it is the money is the task at hand, because the ceiling I feel that I've reached creatively, the plateau that I'm on is a money plateau. I feel like I can, it sounds cheap. It sounds like I'm trying to be a con artist, but I think that I mean, if you didn't give Spielberg whatever $5 million to make Jaws, you know, he doesn't make Jaws.
Right.
So I just feel like I've exploited my abilities to do things without money as far as I can exploit them with the amount of money that I have available to myself. So the task at hand is to make as much money as I can within the, you know, confines of my artistic development, but it's in service to go beyond the development. I mean, how much time are we supposed to be spending on things that we could just be spending money on?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting to watch even since you've launched the YouTube channel. That started with a very successful Kickstarter. So that was almost tier 1. Then more recently, you've launched a Patreon, which is exciting. And I'm sure that in some capacity clears your head to just create when the money is coming in. And you've launched products and all these different things that are coming in that tier. Now, I remember one of your videos was talking about different dreams you have. And I think a couple of those dreams were creating a sort of work school, a fix-it club. Okay, let's say tier 1 was Kickstarter. In this most recent chapter, tier 1 was Kickstarter, 2 was Patreon. What sorts of things would you want to see in tier 3?
I'm very much engrossed in sort of the task at hand. I don't know. I just want to keep this thing alive. This channel, I want to keep it going. And like a lot of this to me is me learning, is like you get to see sort of the byproduct of me learning. A lot of these videos are me really thinking about certain issues and experiences. And it comes out in the form of these, 10-minute videos.
Yep.
So at this point, I'm just so focused on like sort of dollar figure thresholds that I have to reach them because I have a child, and like healthcare is extremely, it's $2,700 a month for my family. That's a lot of money.
Wow. Yeah.
And, you know, I live in an expensive, modest house. I'm very blessed that the way that I'm able to acquire these resources is through this set of skills that I've developed and through this talent and through this medium. That's a very extreme blessing because like almost all of my countrymen are in the same situation, and almost all of them are in some business or occupation that they hate or that just sucks, and that, or has like, you know, that has fluorescent lighting. It allows me opportunities to meet more people like you guys, and, you know, more people who I've looked up to that now, hey, I like your work too.
I mean, you're literally illustrating all these barriers to entry to being in the position you are. The artistic struggle is real. The starving artist, we've all heard the term, you know, you acknowledge you do have a gifting and a talent, and it's apparent to someone like me for sure. And that's something that you've leveraged throughout your career and done pretty amazing things with. One thing that you have a lot of is the experience. And you did start this even before the ages Kyler and I are. And you have so many years invested into this process and learning that you've gone through successes and failures. You know, I think about the HBO show. I've heard you guys talking about the high that was, like having landed a show, you know, feeling like this was what's going to bring the windfall and just keep bringing new projects and having doors open to new opportunities. One, I'd love for you to share a little bit about like, okay, what happened after achieving that? But two, how do you constantly work through that struggle to make it as an artist?
You know, one program director picked our show, and then after she'd picked our show and the contracts were signed and everything, a new program director came on board. So we were like a stepchild. So I think that the brilliance of the HBO putting that show on the air is that they were able to, like, before anyone, sort of showcase what the internet was going to become in the next 20 years. And then ironically, you know, the internet is going to bury all of those systems. So HBO shifted to these ultra high budget, Game of Thrones and The Sopranos and so forth. They're sort of their current business model, and the business model of those premium cable and streaming services, these ultra high budget addictive series. So we were kind of one of the last little guys, you know, but I was expecting, you know, millions and millions of dollars. And I thought that, you know, if you're on HBO,
you've done it.
You know, you're set. You can live like a successful dentist, but you know, it was just like a one-time buyout thing. And then this wasn't news to me. I knew this was going to happen. I just never experienced it. There's all these lawyers, and it's like, wait a second, you're going to get X number of dollars for 8 hours of phone calls when it took me 5 years of like fixing my bike by the side of the road because I couldn't afford to bring it to a bike shop, and like you know, running hard drives covered in plastic bags in the rain up to 94th Street from Soho on a bicycle. And I only get X number of dollars, but it's just like, well, yeah, man, that's the life you've chosen. And, you know, it just, expectations or disappointments waiting to happen. I thought it was just like, you're set at that point. And this was the beginning of it was where the internet kind of meets the traditional. And no, you weren't. That wasn't it. You had to just keep going and going and have vision and keep going. And I thought that like cinema was the highest form of like entertainment, you know, and that's like in all the levels, like with money and all that stuff. And those guys, like at the Academy Awards, they still think that they're the most relevant. They still think people give a shit about those movies. See, I used to watch 500 feature films a year. And like, I'm sorry, but YouTube and these streamers and everything, they ate your lunch, and it's a different world now. And I think maybe I just came a little too late to YouTube, and what Casey did was brilliant. I'm glad I wasn't out there competing with him though. I'm glad I wasn't doing it at the same time as him, because one, he would have just destroyed me business wise. And then two, there would have been all these comparisons that I kind of welcome now. Probably the work would have been similar, but his would have been a little bit better. And now at this time, there's kind of older guys like me are starting to watch stuff on the platform.
I guess a question is like, how do you push on when you get a ton of no's and the doors close?
Yeah, because that's something we really relate to, as much as I think certainly on social media and so forth, you're showing the projects that you do get and you show the successes you do have. But yeah, 90-something% of our experience is definitely getting another no, another meeting that doesn't go how you hoped, another delay.
And in early years, it's like, I think we can keep pushing through, and then you keep finding some of the successes, but you still get a ton of the no's and you get a little down, but then you get the yeses. But put 10 years, 20 years on that, like that sounds tough.
Well, the way that I deal with that is that with YouTube, with these platforms, it's just honest. It's like, if you're not getting enough hits, you're not good enough, guy. Just work on you. They give you all the data. They show you where people stop watching your videos. They show you, which duration of video is most successful. You have all of this data. You don't have to guess. And so I guess that's how I do with it. I just don't put myself in a position for people to say no. I mean, you guys probably listen to Rogan. You hear him talk about it. He's like, I'm not interested in doing anything. And he's like the most successful guy. Yeah. You know, this guy, Andrew Schultz.
The comedian?
Yeah. He has one of the biggest Patreons on the platform.
Okay.
And he has a very successful YouTube show. And he talks about when Jimmy Fallon and all those guys during COVID had to come and do their shows the way that he was doing his show.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, it's a home game now.
Yeah.
Because he knew he had the edge on them. And like,
yep. Well, yeah. And now all of the talk show hosts, they have their own podcasts. All of the TV people, they have a YouTube channel. So it is where the future's going, as we're seeing these foundations that were once held in such high respect are crumbling or simply becoming outdated.
You guys are too young to have seen almost every newspaper collapse. Almost every magazine disappear. These were things that had been around for hundreds of years. And then this technology comes out and it's all gone in 15 years. Yeah. Think of all the kids like me who went to college and, I'm going to go work at such and such magazine or such and such. Yeah. Nope. No, I mean, it's just, but you can have a blog. Yeah. I wonder, because your channel isn't on YouTube, is it? It's on like another platform.
We are on YouTube. But most of our work is direct to client. So most of our stuff is not produced for us. I think we started out doing some of our own like passion projects. Some of the, I guess, sticking points that we've had of like, okay, we feel we have this phenomenal series and, we have pitched different networks and whatnot and been close to landing certain things. And truly this show, Live the Outbound Life, started as a concept that we were going to do this as a show. It was going to be where we're going with, someone like yourself that we look up to and want to learn from. We're going to go on an adventure with you, and we're going to go and do these things, do things we're all passionate about in real life, go on an adventure. And then we have the conversations that come from it. And we shot a pilot for a brand.
Yeah. And actually with two separate Fortune 500 companies, with one of them, we spent about 6 months at least developing something that they were going to distribute and partner with. Their management ended up shifting, and sure enough, bye on that one. And then there was another Fortune 500 company that 1 year the stars really aligned, and they said, guys, do you have any ideas? We said, hey, we got a sizzle reel to show you. We show it to them. I mean, this is exactly what they were looking for. 12 episode series. They said, you guys know a lot of people, but anybody you don't know, we're going to leverage our big brand power and we're going to go access them for you. And it was we had a verbal agreement on that. And I think it was about 3 days before Christmas that we get an email, a long email about how their stocks are down. The CEO is pulling all sorts of external projects left and right. So sure enough, it wasn't going to happen. But I think what ended up happening is we realized that who knows when the next big company or network or whoever it might be, the person who really believes in you is like, yeah, you've got what we're looking for. Who knows when they're going to come around? So what we tasked ourselves to do at that point is we're going to continue making the relationships, learning from the people that one day we would want on this show. And that's really where the podcast came from. Because even we were so in our head for so many years about where to start. Is it a video podcast? Do we travel to the guests? Should we have some sort of experience? Should we be out for a hike? Like there was such an analysis paralysis that eventually we decided, listen, let's just strip it down to the simplest process, something somebody can jump on a Zoom call if they have time. And then you start creating. And even out of the process of just using the simplest tool possible to connect with people we find really interesting, different projects have been coming out of that. Oh, you guys do video. Well, maybe you could help me. And so I will say that is kind of it continues to be the big dream we have to eventually bring this project to fruition where we are going on what we call learning journeys, learning adventures with the people that we really admire.
Yeah, and I think the moral of the story is you need to create. You need to start now and put yourself out there. Because I think one of the main takeaways that we've found over the years is you can't let the external factors get in the way of working towards creating what you're passionate about.
Yeah. As far as like ambition, you got to go for the platforms that are free and that are, cutting edge, and Patreons and the YouTube.
Yeah. That's good. Well, Van, on that note, definitely don't want to take too much of your time so we can wrap up here. And Van, on that note, how can the people follow what you're doing, support what you're doing?
My YouTube channel is called The Spirited Man, but it's my name, Van Neistat. But, you just search The Spirited Man on YouTube and you'll find it. And then I have a Patreon that's also called The Spirited Man. Those are the two things that I concentrate on, are the Patreon and the YouTube channel.
Everybody definitely give them a follow. And I'm curious if there's any big project that you're working on right now, as far as even just something physically that you're building that a video might come out of. Is there any big project that you're tackling?
Yeah, I'm swapping the engine of my 87 diesel Land Cruiser for a brand new Cummins R2.8 diesel, which weighs 270 pounds less than this. Oh, wow. Has like a lot more horsepower. Nice. So I'm not doing that myself, though. I'm hiring a company to do it because it's a huge job.
Is that the company in Bozeman?
Yes.
Okay. Those are the guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the Land Cruiser guys?
Yeah.
You've referenced? Okay. Sweet. Yeah, I've seen that in the videos. Well, I'll look forward to seeing once you get that baby purring, and I'm sure it'll make it in some of your videos. So
yeah. Well, Van, again, this has been so special for us and everybody listening. Yes, follow this man, watch what he's doing. As a starter's guide, I would say check out his videos. Why Do Details Matter? Running Sucks. And then also his video on indecision, which I think is titled something like What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. I think you watch those 3 videos. That'll be enough to open the can of worms that is Van Neistat. And we will we'll wrap it up here.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for having me, and best of luck to you. You're doing a fantastic thing here.
Thank you so much, Van.
Thanks, Van. A few closing thoughts, guys. First, we're so grateful you took the time to listen today. It really means a lot to us to be able to share our journey with you. Second, if you got any value or inspiration from this episode, please take a minute to leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. Lastly, remember, your story matters. So go for it today and live the outbound life.